All right, with me today is Tasshin Fogleman. So Tasshin lives full-time at Maple, which is a monastic training center in Vermont.
Hi, friends. Hi, James.
So Tasshin and I met in 2017, I think, during Building a Second Brain, which is Tiago Forte's sort of knowledge management course. Do you remember how we met, Tasshin?
Mm, I don't remember exactly. I guess I know we were taking the course together, and um, I think I'd seen you around Twitter a bunch, and knew who you were, and then just generally liked how you were like participating in the course, and then I think we were just like talking in private messages there or something else, and I don't remember the exact occasion that we were connecting, but it was definitely through that course.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that you were both monastic and also into productivity and note taking and this sort of thing. Can you talk a
Mhm.
little bit about like how you got into productivity while also being monastic?
Yeah. Well, I guess it would have been in high school, I was reading Lifehacker quite a bit, which was kind of the golden age of Lifehacker. I mean, now it's sort of not so cool. It's,
Yeah.
just a lot of advertisements and stuff. But back in the day, like Gino Trapani and the other people that were running that site, it was like one of the coolest websites. And I would read the articles like religiously. And, they were always talking about getting things done, GTD. And so I went and read GTD, and I don't know, I must have been like 14 or 13 when I first read it. And, you know, I don't think I like fully understood it at the time, but I did it as much as I could and kind of worked its way into uh, how I, did my homework and did my classwork and different projects that I had. And, of course, that was kind of supported by like most of the task managers at the time were like increasingly adopting GTD as kind of the philosophy for how they did things, and so that was really helpful. And yeah, so when I started training at Maple about 5 years ago, uh, part of what we do is like meditation training, and part of it is like leadership training, like helping to run the nonprofit here. We're legally a nonprofit organization, and so part of the day I'm doing something that looks a lot like traditional monastic training, seated silent meditation, chanting, chores, things like this. But there's also parts of the day where, as you can see, we've got like whiteboards here and like desks, and I'm like writing emails and uh, doing all kinds of things that like modern knowledge work essentially. And so it was natural that I was using GTD for that. And um, yeah, actually, my fellow monastic, Daniel Ryushin Thorson, he started his Emerge podcast while I was first training at Maple. And um, one of the first people that he interviewed was Tiago Forte. And Tiago was just it was actually Tiago's first podcast interview, if I'm remembering correctly. And, it's kind of funny to listen to it now because he's like much less polished in this interview than he is now. Um, Sort of awkward and it's just kind of goofy. And, but that podcast episode just totally blew my mind. It was clear that he was operating at a much higher level with productivity than I was, and that he had solved some problems that I'd been facing, specifically stuff around like reference notes and using a computer. And I had tried a lot of different solutions, and he was clearly finding solutions that were working a lot better for him than the things I was trying. So yeah, it's been kind of a journey since then. And basically, the more that I master these skills, the better my training goes, and the more I'm able to help people.
Very cool. I'll make sure to link that podcast below if you want to hear some OG Tiago Forte recordings
Yeah, it's also OG Daniel Thorson
and
recordings. I
OG
mean, it was
Daniel
like maybe
Thorson.
his
Yeah.
like fourth or fifth podcast, and now he's a pro. So
Yeah. So Tashin, I brought you on today because I wanted to chat a little bit about asynchronous work. The way we work together is kind of unusual, I think, and this asynchronous remote style of working, I think, can be really beneficial to a lot of people that haven't even considered it as an option. You're a monastic, and your schedule is very tightly controlled, right? And there's times where you're you're supposed to be meditating or sitting or chanting, and your free time moves around, and even there are times when uh, you're on retreat or you're on solitary retreat in a cabin by yourself for 100 something days, right? So
yeah,
our schedules don't always line up. So when we're working together on projects, we have to do this asynchronous style of work. What both Tasshin and I found after taking Building a Second Brain is that our friends and our colleagues were asking about all this productivity advice because they saw the step change in what we were doing. And we realized that, hey, like I'm answering the same questions all the time, and Tasshin, you're answering the same questions all the time. Why don't we put together something that can sort of answer these questions for people without us having to repeat ourselves all the time? So we came up with this idea for a digital productivity coach. Do you want to touch on like how we started putting that together and sort of our work style while we made that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, pretty much as soon as I took Building a Second Brain, I knew I wanted to bring it to the monastery and help the monastics gain those skills. Really, what we're all about is creating leaders who are not just powerful leaders, but also have the capacities that are cultivated through meditation trainings, through spiritual practice, which we call wisdom and love. People understand power really well, but monastic training is excellent at creating people with wisdom and love. And so we want to integrate those skills.
So tell me more
Um,
about how you and I work together asynchronously.
yeah, well, my schedule is a little unusual. It changes a lot. I mean, I've been in multiple locations. I've been in our California location and also our Vermont location, gone back and forth a few times. And so, and even when I am at one location, what I'm doing from day to day, week to week, month to month changes quite a bit. Typically, I have about 2.5 hours of free time each day with one full day off each week. And then there's a week each month where I'm on retreat. That's the default. But then, as you said earlier, like I did extensive solitary retreat in our cabins here this year. So about 117 days ish over two separate retreats in our cabins. And so we had to like, there was two retreats. So we met before I went in and then met after I got out and then I went back in and we were kind of like juggling and passing the baton. So,
That's a whole nother
um,
story we'll have to touch on later.
yeah, yeah. Um, So I think that's been a real forcing function, at least for me, in our relationship. Of we worked on a number of projects together, and we're kind of constantly talking about what we're working on and what we're learning. But like when I'm available changes quite a bit, and we have to plan around my schedule quite a bit. And of course, you're working as well, but I'm offline for typically at least half the day, if not all day, most days. So um, a lot, like by default you and I are asynchronous, and then maybe like once a month, every couple of weeks, something like that, where we get on a video call like this and kind of catch up about specific things that need more like real-time interaction.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. We've never actually met in person. And like you said, we maybe hop on a call once a month or not even, but somehow we're still able to work on projects together and get stuff done. I really have been almost surprised myself at how much we can accomplish together. And part of that is because we both are very productive people in the first place, but also I think there's a lot of benefits to this asynchronous work style that we have that might not show up in sort of a normal, quote unquote normal way of working together.
How like you work a sort of typical 9 to 5
Yeah.
job. I actually have not really worked a typical 9 to 5 job, maybe a couple of times, like briefly, but it's not been my thing. And I'm curious, like how our working style compares to like the work that you do for your day job.
Yeah. So like for my day job, I work remotely, which is a little unusual, but still I'm expected to be on the clock from roughly 8 to 5, something like that. Um, and if my boss or another employee has a question or something, I need to be available to answer that. We work on projects and assign things and work together. Um, and so it's sort of this like ad hoc, like sometimes you're working on this thing and then your boss has a task to do and you have to go do that for a second. So there's a lot of task switching, a lot of you need to be working on this project for a while, a lot of interruptions. Whereas when you work asynchronously, you have a little more freedom on when you're working on certain projects and when during the day. matching the type of work to the type of mood, I think, is a really big benefit of working asynchronously. For instance, there's on the DPC, there's a lot of creative work, right? Writing the actual prompts and putting together the ideas or writing exercises for people to do. But there's also a lot of admin work, handling payments processing and handling emails and all this other sort of thing that's more on the admin side. And the way we work asynchronously, it's much easier to match those types of tasks with the sort of mood I'm feeling at the time. That match makes it much easier to get stuff done without feeling like you're fighting yourself, right? Whereas in my 9 to 5 job, if I have to get a task done by the end of the day, it doesn't matter if I'm tired, right? I still have to get it done. It doesn't matter if my like creative juices aren't flowing. I have to sort of bang my head against the wall until they do. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that's the major difference, I think, with like a typical workday and like the way we work together.
Yeah, that reminds me that like it's been very clear to me since the beginning that you and I started working together on the Digital Productivity Coach and then later on my blog. All of that, the way that we work together, I think is really dependent on the fact that you and I both have a very high level of productivity skills and a similar way of working. There's not a lot of sort of discussion about how to do things or like, how a specific tool works or like, I just know that you have certain skills and know how to use certain tools and you know that about me. And so we can kind of give each other like what Tiago calls like intermediate packets. And then like the other person will be able to like use it and take it to the next packet. And there's not a lot of overhead for like, oh, this is how progressive summarization works, or this is how project management works, or these things like that.
Exactly. There's a certain level of trust that we have with each other, in the sense that I think there's a phrase you like to use is do what you say you will. Where if I say like, hey, I'm gonna pick up and write these two things, you can trust that I'll get it done, and vice versa, of course. And yeah, like you said, we have this shared common language around building a second brain concepts like intermediate packets, where I know that the best way to leave work for you to do is to make it really easy for you to pick it up. So I'll format a note or a section or a document in such a way that it's easy for you to pick it up. You know what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Definitely.
there's definitely this type of asynchronous work requires sort of a level of productivity skill and a level of trust that you might not find with everyone you meet.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think are some of the big drawbacks of working in this way?
Well, I'm a little sad hearing you mention it that we've never met in person.
Yeah,
That's been like, I think we might have done that this year if not for COVID. I bet it would
yeah,
have
for sure.
happened in that alternate universe. But yeah, like at this point, really consider you a very close friend, even though we've never met in person. And I think that's a huge drawback. I mean, I'd love to give you a hug right now. That'd be
Yeah,
great. And that's a drawback. I don't know. On the rare occasions where something really does need to happen synchronously, like I may not be available, you might not be available. But that's really rare. I mean, just the other day, actually, I was like out and about in Burlington, Vermont, which is the major city here. It's not the capital, but it is the largest city. And I was like doing something for the monastery, and then this problem with my blog came up, and I was like, oh, I need James's help because I'm not at my computer and I can't like edit WordPress. And I slacked you and you happened to be available and like could fix it within 10 minutes and was really grateful for that. But like, that's one that's super rare in our
yeah,
relationship. Like, I don't think anything like that has ever happened before.
yeah. I think that's
And
the first time
two,
you've had a like, oh no, I needed a turnaround in minutes.
yeah, yeah. And there, like, I knew asking you that like, one, it was very possible that you wouldn't be able to do it. And two, that it was like, uh, yeah, it was almost like an unreasonable request in our relationship. It was like, I can't assume that you'd be available, but happily you were. But I think that's a downside. I mean, most of what we're doing, almost all of it, if not all of it, can be done asynchronously, long time scales. There's no rush. And that's really nice, but a lot of work isn't really like that.
Yeah, for sure. This working style only works for a certain type of uh, either product or deliverable, where there's not necessarily a super strict deadline, and you're not necessarily uh, promising a result for a customer or something like that.
Hmm.
If we were trying to deliver the digital productivity coach as as a a product for a client who needed it by a certain date, I don't know how great this style of working would be. But at the same time, I do feel like working on projects together in this way over the long run is a great way to make more. I think it just doesn't necessarily seem that way because there's no strict deadlines.
Yeah. I mean, I was really surprised and impressed at how much we got done last year. I think it took us about 5 months, something like that, to make the digital productivity coach. I think we started talking about it in March of last year, and then like launched it maybe in August or September or something like that. And um, I think when we started it, we didn't really know where it was going to go. We just knew there was a problem that we both had, and kind of just kept meeting and working on it. And it sort of evolved into something that I don't think either of us really expected the form that it ended up taking.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's one of the other cool things about this asynchronous process is that we both can be pushing the direction of the project in a direction that maybe none of us had any idea it would go in, right? So it's been cool in that way. Well, thanks for talking with me today, Tasshin. This has been a great discussion on asynchronous work. I'll leave a link to your blog down below, and I'll also leave a link to the Digital Productivity Coach. Check it out. It's pretty cool. Any parting words for our viewers?
No, just thanks for having me. This was fun to chat about.
Yeah, likewise. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Definitely.
Cheers.
Cheers.